Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Young Adult Meet for this Monday. As you know, the topic is quite a unique one. It's about Queen Mary and the paranormal. Usually when we hear a talk about Mary, it's typically about who she is, what's her unique role in salvation history, but rarely do you ever hear about Mary and the paranormal going together. So I would like to explore that with you and to give you some new insights that's from the church's wisdom about her role, that she's not just the mother of God, she's not some domestic figure, but she's a powerful warrior. And as you'll see later, there are some pretty, I'd say, brutal or savage terms that were given to her. It's a little scary when we get to that. So there are some terms, some titles that were given to Mary by saints and even doctors of the church that I think you'll be pretty shocked to find out. So we'll get to that. And I'd like to begin with a couple questions, let's see, level setting questions to see where we're at. So feel free to just go through these and we'll just keep it open. So they're all true and false questions, just 10 of them. So I'd like you guys to just take a minute, take a second to think about this and see what the answer is. It's either true or false. So first, is the statement true, that ghosts exist? Raise your hands if you think it's true. And raise your hands if you think it's false. Okay. So the answer is it's true, but for those who raise their hands for false, is it because you have a different definition of what a ghost means? So just really quick, why would you think it was false before?
I shouldn't go on lack of evidence, but I think there's just too much of like people being caught in media or like TV and shows and things of like the paranormal and ghost hunting and all those things. And so part of the time you don't know if it's true or not of what's being recorded and what's out there, and you don't know is it a ghost, is it a spirit, is it an energy, like what is it?
Okay. Very good.
Mine is very similar to Alejandro's. It's like, and not necessarily like I haven't had an experience with ghosts before, thankfully. But I think also like you do see like all the paranormal like shows and you're not yeah.
And as we'll get to later, it's a lack of definition really. When I put this up here, I purposely put the generic ghost, but in everyone's mind, it's one word, but everyone interprets it differently. Some people think of ghosts as just the souls of dead people, or some think of it as demons. So we'll get to what it really means when we say ghosts from a Catholic worldview and from what the church's stance is on ghosts. So we'll go through the other 9. If you have any questions, by the way, please keep it to the end. We'll have a Q&A session just to address all of the questions. So for the sake of time, we can get through the whole presentation. So next one. Souls can wander the earth or become lost after death. So how about this? Just as part of a little activity, why don't we separate the room in half? I like to have just this half here get in a little small semicircle and this half get together. And as we go through this, we'll give like about a minute per question, just so you guys can discuss amongst yourself what your different opinions are. So really quick, just go ahead and go for it. Just get into a semicircle. What were your various opinions and what's the consensus for this particular statement?
I don't think we got to a consensus, but we're, we do think that souls can come back to you. We're just questioning the word wander, like walk around aimlessly.
Sure.
Same thing with the word lost, because, some spirits come back and ask for prayers. They have a purpose, they're not lost. So.
Okay.
Leaning towards yes, just disagreeing with some of the verbs.
Okay. All right. The wander and become lost after death. Sure.
False.
False. Just
Yeah.
in general.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They have to go to hell, heaven, or purgatory.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the answer to this is actually false. Souls, and the key here is the term wander. Souls can come back to earth by God's permission. However, they cannot wander aimlessly or just do whatever they want to do. And they don't become lost after death. After death, it's just the immediate judgment. Everyone's guardian angel takes one to see God himself. So there really is no way to get lost or to wander the earth. So the next one, this one should be a no-brainer, hopefully. The church does not perform exorcisms anymore. False, yes? So false. There are some people though, even within the church, higher up in the church, who believe the complete opposite. They don't believe that the church conducts exorcisms anymore, and those who do are actually doing harm to the church. So that's one of the more unfortunate things that we have to face now.
Is that through personal?
Yes. So in the book by Father Gabriel Amorth, he's been criticized by many Italian bishops and cardinals. He's listed the names out, I just don't remember what the names are, but they've written articles to pretty much defame him and to put him down. They've even written his bishop to censor him from writing more books or speaking about the topic. It's very unfortunate. And they had their own conference of theologians write a rebuttal to this, basically make him look like a fraud. So it's very unfortunate. This one's actually a go kicker. You cannot be harmed by the devil as long as you live a sacramental life and avoid mortal sins.
False.
False? That's right. That is false. And yet, there are current trends who think if you do that, you just live a good life, go receive the sacraments frequently, and just avoid mortal sin, you are in good hands. The devil will not touch you. At least it won't possess you, it won't oppress you. So this is false. Now, you cannot be harmed by curses or black magic as long as you go to confession and you receive the Eucharist often. So we're thinking here, huh? Kim says false. You think false too, Peter?
Yeah.
Does anyone think true? Nobody? Alright, it is false. Very similar to the statement before that. This one's a little trickier. Laying on your hands on a person to pray over them is safe. Like what the charismatics do at charismatic retreats or deliverance groups.
Safe in what manner?
Safe. No harm, no negative consequence can come from that. False. You think false?
True seems too easy, so yeah, I'm gonna go false.
Okay. Good thing there's no charismatics in here. There will be like a debate right now. This is false. So there's, the prevalent thought now in charismatic groups, especially those run by lay people, they tend to think as long as they go to confession a week before, laying on their hands on a person during a charismatic retreat is safe. So we'll get to that later. There's a video that really expounds upon this concept and how it's not safe. Animals and objects cannot be haunted or possessed. True or false?
False.
Have you seen
False.
Pet Cemetery?
Well, that's a movie.
True.
But yes, it is false. They can be possessed. If you recall in the gospel when the legion entered the swine, where Jesus commanded them to come out and they ran the swine basically off the cliff. And in a previous talk that I've given similar to this, there was a missionary who was in Africa for some time. And she claimed, she says, without a shadow of a doubt, that she has seen possessed animals when she was over there doing missionary work. So she didn't go into the details, but she says, I know the difference between a wild animal and a possessed animal. So she's seen that. It's pretty rad. When your house is haunted, should you seek help from a psychic?
False.
False, definitely. Can you coexist peacefully with friendly spirits? Is there such thing as a friendly spirit? Yes, Casper? This is false. There is no such thing as coexisting with friendly spirits.
What about angels?
Yes, so when we say friendly spirits here, we're talking about ghosts who appear as the kid who died there 20 years ago. Or the little boy, your little cousin that died like a month ago, just appearing to you and on a frequent basis, not asking for anything, just keeps on appearing to you. So that's what we mean by friendly spirits. Angels definitely would count, and we have to live with them for the rest of our life anyway. The guardian angels are with us all the time, whether we deny it or we believe it. So that's what I mean by friendly spirits. This is pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
False?
Mm-hmm.
Very harmful? And is exorcism and deliverance the same thing? Very different, yes. They're very different. So now that I kind of know where we're all at here, then we can just basically go through the definitions. Last year I gave a more like, I'd say a more academic presentation from the church and from what the church teaches. For this time around, I like to keep that very brief and give you more stories. A lot of stories, anecdotes from my own life, from people I know, and also from the cases I've read. So it will really solidify what we're talking about. So just to briefly go through definitions. Paranormal, that word para just means along the normal. It's alongside the normal. And within the paranormal, you have two different subsets. You have preternatural and you have the supernatural. So anytime you hear that word paranormal, most often the person talking about it doesn't really know what they're talking about. They have to know that there's a distinction. Preternatural means that it's beyond normal, but in a demonic sense, in that connotation. And whenever you hear supernatural, you're seeing something above, exceedingly beyond, but that only refers to what's holy, what's sacred. So that's the main difference between preter and the supernatural. And of course, the word ghost is often misunderstood. So ghost in Old English came from Gast. The Middle English for that was ghost or Gust. German is Geist. So that term poltergeist means a noisy ghost. And now we have the word ghost. So over time, you can see the development of that word ghost. And of course, you probably know prior to 1962, if you read those old Baltimore catechisms or any catechism before that time, we would often refer to the Holy Spirit as the Holy Ghost. All it means is either a soul, when we're talking about a person, in reference to a person, ghost just means a soul, or we can just mean that to say the Spirit, so the Holy Spirit. So don't get those confused, it's just a matter of linguistics at this point. That's what I mentioned before. So the paranormal, a little bit more in depth. You have those two subsets I mentioned before, and there are things beyond this universe. Supernatural is only from God, the saints, the angels, and the purgatorial souls that some of you mentioned before. Preternatural, the main characters are damned souls and demons. They're two very different types of beings. They're not the same thing. Sometimes you would hear people say any soul or any being in hell is referred to as a demon. It's not true. The demon refers to angels who are fallen. So fallen angels are demons. When you talk about damned souls, yes, they are in hell, but they are human souls who have fallen. So you have fallen angels and you have fallen human beings. And that's where you get the damned souls and the demons. So in the supernatural, just very quickly, you have miracles, right? Such as Jesus' miracles of healings, even miracles nowadays of people with gifts of healing, like the charismatic gifts I mentioned before. I'm pretty sure you guys are aware, or maybe some of you are aware, of Father Michael Joseph Lund, who used to be a Redemptorist here at Long Beach. He's now in Texas, and currently he's studying for further studies in Rome. But he was very famous for the gift of healing, among other charismatic gifts. So during that time he was still here, a lot of people flocked to the Redemptorist Church in Long Beach. They would come every Monday and Wednesday when he has these sessions. All he did was lay hands on the people, pray over them. Some people were miraculously healed indeed, and some people who had other ailments or whatever other problems were also healed from that. So we see examples of that today. Apparitions, obviously Lourdes, right? Fatima, all those Marian apparitions. Purgatorial souls who appear to family members or even to non-family members. Those are all under the supernatural. You have Eucharistic miracles. And we're not talking about transubstantiation, even though that is a miracle in itself. We're talking about transspeciation, when the species, the bread, actually turns into heart tissue, and the wine turns into blood. So we're talking about that in reference to Eucharistic miracles. The Vatican has actually approved over 200 of these miracles, and you can find more about that in a book. It's called The Eucharistic Miracles of the World. So that's actually published by the Vatican directly. Shroud of Turin, pretty sure you know about that one. Our Lady of Guadalupe in the Tilna, over 400, 500 years old, and it's still existing today when it should have corrupted within a decade. Now this incorruptible bodies of the saints, this is something that's very unique to our religion. All these other things, you can find parallels within other religions, such as people claiming to see Muhammad, they claim to see Buddha, that kind of thing. But when you get to incorruptible bodies, this is what really separates the Catholic faith from other faiths. So incorruptible bodies, in short, are just bodies of saints who have died, and they've been dead for sometimes centuries, sometimes half a century, and yet their body defies the laws of decomposition. They don't decompose, and we'll get to see that in the next few minutes. So here's some pictures of purgatory. This is what's called the Museum of Purgatory in Rome, Italy. Don't know if you guys have ever been here, but if you do go to Rome, check out Italy, please check out this quaint little purgatory museum. And what it does is it collects all the artifacts that have been recognized by the church after extensive research of souls who have authentically appeared on earth, and they left behind signs of their appearances, such as the following. You can see a little bit here. This is a mark left behind by a Father Panzini. He used to be the former abbot of Mantua, and he appeared to a Mother Superior named Isabella in the Clares Monastery in Todi. This was actually taken in November 1st, 1731. So it's a sign that he appeared to her, and all he did was ask for Mass. He just asked for Mass, prayers, so he could be delivered from purgatory. Left behind a burnt crucifix here, and his own hand mark onto this piece of wood. Another example, you can see some fingerprint marks here, left by the right hands of a Joseph Skitz on a German prayer book. So he left this behind. And what is really interesting with this is, if you guys know paper, if you touch paper to fire, it'll just consume the entire paper. That's just the nature of paper. You cannot touch a piece of paper on any end and it won't consume the rest of it. But the fact that this paper was only burnt on those specific spots and it didn't consume the rest of the paper is miraculous in itself. So this was left behind in December 21st, 1838. And of course, here's another example of a handprint, much more clear than the last one. Left behind in 1815, but the person died in 1785. So the world of the paranormal, the world of purgatory, it's very bizarre. It's very different from our world. All we know that it does exist, and that we should always respect whatever comes from there. So all the request here was offer 2 masses for me, and I will be free from purgatory. And that's what happened. After 2 masses were offered for her. And this is, of course, Saint Bernadette, the incorruptible body I mentioned before. So Saint Bernadette, she died in 1858, as you can see. And as you look at her body, her face is pretty much incorruptible. So I don't need to explain how this is miraculous. And she's just one among many different saints out there that have incorruptible bodies. They say that her body is also nimble, it's supple, so you can move her digits, her fingers, and her bones as if she's just sleeping. It's not even rigid at all. So that's Bernadette. This is St. Padre Pio, died in 1968. His body was exhumed, I believe, in 2008 from the ground up, and it was found in this condition, perfectly intact. So that's another example of a modern-day saint. So when you have time, definitely check out. There's a whole book by Joan Carroll Cruz just on the incorruptible bodies of the saints. So as you can see, they're very different from mummies. You can't call these mummified bodies. They're very different from mummies. So shroud of Turin, we talked about that. So now that we've briefly went through the supernatural, we're going to delve more into the preternatural, which is the main topic of tonight. So you can see right here, you guys know what that is? A little ghost stop. Ghost Stop is one of the companies out there that sells ghost box. They're called voice boxes. And what ghost hunters believe is if you use this box to communicate with the dead, it amplifies your message to the dead world. And pretty much the dead and the spirit can hear your voice better. In return, what the voice box does is it picks up the voice of the dead. It picks up the frequency of the dead that you wouldn't hear otherwise. So what usually happens is they would turn this on, then they would ask really ridiculous questions. They would say, why are you here, and do you want to harm the family? And oftentimes when you watch these shows, it's always the family that gets harmed that calls the ghost hunters. They always get hurt. And yet these guys are sitting there and they're saying, why are you hurting these people? Are you hurting these people? They ask really ridiculous questions. And so once they record those sessions, they hear nothing at the time, but they play it back to the computer. They oftentimes do hear a response back. They always hear a response back, but only through the voice box. So for whatever reasons, when a demon communicates with them, it communicates in that frequency that can't be heard by the human ear. So that's a little ghost box for you. Diabolical activities are often disguised as good, always disguised as good. Every single show that you watch, a ghost hunter show, has that one thing in common. The ghost is good. You either have a good ghost or you have a demon and a bad ghost. And good ghosts, oh, we pity them. They're lost. We got to bring them to the light, that kind of thing. They don't know where to go, which is ridiculous. We've gone over this, right, at the trivia. Souls do not get lost. Souls know exactly where to go because they're guided by their angels to go to the judgment throne of God at death. So oftentimes, demons, they would use that ignorance to their advantage. They would always appear in the form of a person that was a former loved one, or that used to live in the house before, but always some innocent figure. So apparitions of any ghosts who can harm you, that's basically what they appear as. These are, like I mentioned, demons, always demons disguised as bad people, or dead people. And at times, very rarely, but you will find this, damned souls, if allowed by the Lord, they can also come back and shapeshift. They can appear as themselves in this former life. And sometimes you'll see the sidekicks, they say, oh, I sense this negative entity. It used to be the former headmaster of this house, and he used to beat his slaves or whatever. And that could sometimes be true. Either a demon is disguised as that person, or it could be that entity itself appearing back for whatever reason. So there's not a general principle to all of these, but every case is a case-by-case basis. It's very specific. Violent poltergeist activities in homes or places, that's where you get preternatural, such as you're doing the dishes, you feel someone scratch your back, or you're just reading a book and things just fly off your cabinet, or you hear scratching in the walls, that kind of thing. So within that world, you have what's called levels of demonic activity. So the church identifies the first level, which is what everyone goes through, as temptation. Everyone goes through temptation, no matter what part of life you're in, and you are not exempt from that. But once you get to second level, obsession is when you're having a good life. In general, your life is good, but for some reason, you cannot control your thoughts. You start having these inexplicable bouts of depression. You just feel depressed for no good reason. You just do. Or you feel this uncontrollable rage. You cannot control your emotions, your psychology. That's when you can possibly consider obsession. If you can find out through discerning with a spiritual director, with a good priest, and a good psychologist that you're not clinically insane, mentally insane, and yet you're still going through these, that's when you should consider going through spiritual means to help you with a possible case of obsession. Infestation of places is another category. This is your more popular movie kind of poltergeist activities. So you'll see this a lot in movies. Things happen in the home. This is actually very common, and we call that infestation. Oppression gets a lot worse. Oppression is when you're physically harmed, and you cannot explain why. So all you know is that if you go to sleep that night, and you go into that room, you will be beat at night, or you'll be choked. And you know you're not dreaming, you know you're not sick, and you're not sleeping. You know for a fact that you're awake. That's where all of this oppression comes from. Most often it's physical, but you will see spiritual and emotional oppression as well. And the last level will be possession. We've mentioned possession of an animal before, but possession of a person is the highest level that is allowed by the Lord for the devil to take over a person's body. In possession, the devil cannot take over one's soul, and it cannot take over one's free will at the same time. So that's the clear distinction between exorcisms in the movie and exorcism in real life. They don't take over the soul or their free will. So demons and damn souls can possess, that's the scary part. Damn souls can do that. And there's a case that you'll get to see really soon. So ghosts, the three categories, you have good human souls, angels, and purgatory souls. You got these two.
Question for you on the other side.
Yes.
When you said, it doesn't affect your free will possession,
Yes.
but a demon, if it possesses you, can, make you, walk around
Yes.
somewhere or harm another person.
Yes.
What good is free will in that case?
Right.
Like, why isn't it just out the window?
Right.
there and then?
So in this case, those manifestations, let's say of vomiting or crawling up walls and all of those extraordinary phenomena, they're done not because the victim chooses to do so. The victim can choose not to do so, and the demon just happens to override whatever bodily functions the person has. Because the will, in the end result, it resides in the mind, it resides in the soul. So the soul's ability to exercise free will is a function that the devil cannot take over.
But it can overpower.
It can overpower for a time. So go through this real quick. How do you distinguish? This is usually the question. Okay, I saw something at home and I see it frequently, but how do I know if it's a damn soul, it's a good soul, a demon, or it's a purgatorial soul? So here's how you distinguish. If you have a soul from purgatory, it will never appear to you as that innocent little figure just to entertain you, just to make you feel good or whatever. Purgatorial souls are very brief in their appearance and they're very clear with what they want. They will always tell you, I need prayers, I need mass, or I need you to do some kind of penitential act on my behalf to get out of my purgatorial state. They will never just wander around and just entertain you. Heavenly souls are the same thing. Heavenly souls usually appear to console one who is going through a very difficult time, or heavenly souls are there to rebuke you. They can sometimes appear back and rebuke you if you've been living a life that's contrary to the gospel or a life that's away from God. Sometimes you may see a grandpa, grandfather, some kind of ancestor appear to you, either in the form of dreams or just full-blown apparitions, and they'll be very clear. They'll tell you, you've been living a life that's far away from where you should be. You should go back and align yourself with God. And that's how you'll know. When you start seeing demons or damned souls, you will know for a fact because they will not benefit you. They will not tell you why they're there. They appear once, appear twice, kind of disappear. And over time, they try to attract your attention. They try to get attention. That's all they do. They ask for nothing. And so that's how you would distinguish between the different types. So let's see. I just want to focus on this one. Souls are not allowed to wander the earth. I know this is a belief in a lot of other religions. For us, most of us here, I know it's a no-brainer that souls cannot wander the earth. But suppose somebody does ask you, how do you know that? It's just your religion teaching you that. My religion teaches me that souls do wander. We have to give them food, for example. Like at least in Buddhism, Vietnam, China, there's that practice of offering food to the dead. And they come back because they're hungry. They have nothing in the other world, so they're hungry. As long as you offer them food, they'll leave you alone. So that kind of belief system. The only way you can answer this is if someone's got a problem and they can't get rid of it, even after doing what they've been taught to do, they usually end up coming to the doors of the Catholic Church and asking for help because they can't get rid of their friendly ghost. And that's when things open up for them. They start seeing that there's a whole different world out there, a whole different worldview. Lastly, I think this point is most important. When a demon appears and it disguises itself, you have to keep in mind that it doesn't want your body. Its goal is not to destroy your body. Its goal is to destroy your soul. That's the whole purpose of a demon. When it does harm your body, it does do these physical manifestations of harm. It's only because it knows it will lead you away from God. It approximates. The devil's very smart. If he knows that he can get you hurt and that your faith is weak, he'll know, well, by approximation, most likely you'll go see a psychic since you've been away from the church. most likely you'll go do some kind of occult practice, or go to Barnes & Noble, get yourself a book on witchcraft and counteract that, rather than go to church or go to the sacrament of confession. So whatever it does, it always does with that end in mind. How will this action lead to the loss of this person's soul, not the loss of this person's body or physical health? So that's their ultimate goal. And unfortunately, the majority of victims always end up doing what the devil wants when their faith is weak. So when a person's faith is weak, it often does what the devil wants, which is to lead their soul away from the Lord. So I like to point out this little thing here about damned souls. We're going to go into this case very briefly. In 1928, there's an exorcism case, very famous exorcism case, and you can read it. It's on EWTN's website. It's called Begone Satan. So what happened was, this person, Emma Schmidt, her real name was Anna Eklund, was possessed by her stepmother and also by her father. Both were deceased at the time. So in those cases, you would see a damned soul and demons possessing a person at the same time. Very rare, but you will see those. These people are pretty much like the demons. They have no compassion, no remorse, no love. And at the end of time, when they resurrect with the rest of us, they'll have an incorrupt body just to go back to hell, with soul and body united. So that's just what damned souls are in general. There are those who have freely chose hell. So God doesn't send people to hell. That's often misunderstood, that God sends them against their free will. God can pronounce judgment and say, "Depart from me, you evildoer." You've heard that in the gospel, right? But it doesn't mean that God's sending someone to hell. He's basically pronouncing officially what that person wants by their free will. So if a person freely chooses to be away from God, freely chooses to eternally be away from God, God will respect that. And hence there is a hell for people like that, because they don't want to be anywhere near God. So all the Lord does is pronounce. He just pronounces what's in the heart of every person. So after this slide, Mary's role and everything, I'm going to show a bunch of very informative videos, a lot of stories that I think will tie in everything very well. So her role is basically demons fear her more than God. That might sound blasphemous at first, but the reason is because they're more humiliated by a creature rather than by God. It's like, like if you're watching basketball, let's say someone's so confident that they send a kid into a game against LeBron, just some fifth grader, and LeBron actually loses one-on-one with the fifth grader. Would that be more humiliating, or would it be more humiliating if LeBron lost to another NBA star one-on-one? Probably the fifth grader, obviously. So since Mary is still a creature, they fear her much more because she's been given full dominion, complete dominion over the devil. And interestingly enough, the most difficult cases of exorcism, the most difficult cases of the paranormal, the preternatural in general, are always resolved by our Blessed Mother. She continues to this day. So what I want to get at with Mary is she's not someone who is just in heaven in her own little ivory tower, and ever since she's been up there, she doesn't care about us here on earth. She will continue to be involved in human affairs until the end of time. So she's always involved in these cases. And lastly, she intercedes a lot through the use of sacramentals, especially the miraculous medal, the rosary, and the scapular. So as long as you use those sacramentals with faith, with devotion, you know for a fact that she is with you, to protect you, to guide you. And this, she's been called the Mistress of Hell, officially the Mistress of Hell, by St. Alphonsus Liguori. And St. Alphonsus Liguori got that from St. Bernardine. So during those times, they called her the Mistress of Hell because that's a very, I would say that's a very apt description. They're basically saying that she's the Queen of Heaven. If you're the Queen of Heaven, then you, by extension, are also queen over hell. So the devil is subject to the Mother Mary. They're subject to her will, to her dominion. She's got free reign over all the angels, including the fallen angels. Hence, the doctors of the church actually call her the Mistress of Hell. So it's a little shocker at first, but I think that's a pretty ominous title for our Blessed Mother. So Marian exorcism. I'm going to give you some stories now. Saint Dominic's exorcism. So we'll start with this one. In Saint Dominic's time, there was the Albigensian heresy, and so one day an Albigensian happened to come to Saint Dominic, and he was possessed, and it was determined that he was possessed by 15,000 demons. 15,000 were inside of him. So we're dealing with the legion here. We've seen the precedents before in the Gospels. So what happened was, in short, Saint Dominic could not exorcise the demon or demons in a conventional way. He could not do it in the conventional way. So what he did was he took the rosary, he put it around the neck of the demoniac, and he commanded the demon in the name of Mary to first reveal its name, and second, to state how it got into the person, and third, it has to get out of that person. So finally, the demon relented. It let Dominic know its name, which was Legion. The reason why this Albigensian had so many demons was because he was very blasphemous towards our Blessed Mother. He was extremely blasphemous. Every moment he could get, every chance he could get, he would talk about the Mother in the most impure way, the most offensive way. And for every offense that he gave, one demon was allowed to enter into him as a just punishment. So he was actually being used for the glorification of God. At the end, of course, he was exorcised, and the way they did it was the Mother Mary appeared. So Mother Mary appeared to Saint Dominic, and there was a crowd of people at the time, because it was basically Albigensians versus Catholics. It was like a public spectacle. So the whole town came out to see this exorcism. You can read more about it in Louis de Montfort's Secrets of the Rosary, but I'm just going to give you the very short version of it. So Mother Mary appeared and said to Blessed Dominic, I want you and everyone here to pray the rosary. And every Hail Mary that they said, 1,000 demons left. So as long as they said the full rosary, including all 3 sets of mysteries, that's 15,000 right there. So by the time they finished the entire sets of rosaries, the demons came out, and they came out in the form of hot coals. So this guy would vomit up hot burning coal from his mouth, just for every Hail Mary that was said. So at the end of the exorcism, the Albigensian heresy within that town was completely destroyed. Completely. Everyone who was an Albigensian there, which was basically almost the entire town, converted. And that's how that heresy was defeated throughout that century. It wasn't through debate, it wasn't through theological dispute, it was through the power of the rosary. So hence you'll hear Mary as the conqueror of heresies. You'll hear that title for Mary. Father Theophilus, the Iowa case that I mentioned before, where the daughter was possessed by her dad and also possessed by her stepmother, in addition to Judas, Beelzebub, and Satan himself. I forgot the 6th person. She was possessed by 6 different entities. So in one of the cases, Father Theophilus was the exorcist, and as I mentioned, you can read more about it online. It's completely free. It's called Begone Satan. And I'll link the sources later at the very end. So what happened was, in an exorcism, the key is always to get the name of the demon. Once you get the name of the demon, then you can actually command the demon in the name of the church to get out. So the demon will always try to hide its name. It will never give you its name. In this case, it would not give Father Theophilus its name. So eventually, Father Theophilus said very, very simply, if you will not listen to the saints, the angels, and even the Holy Trinity in your name, and at that moment, the demon let out this loud roar, this shriek, and it says, stop torturing us this way. Whereas before, he invoked everybody in heaven, and it never reacted that way. But all he said was, by the Immaculate Conception, tell me your name. Gave out that loud roar, trying to give a spectacle. Father just kept on hammering it, and finally it says, I'm Beelzebub. And it completely revealed its name one by one. So we found out the 6 different entities and who were in there. So it's pretty creepy when you read it. You can read the full transcription, demons talking, what they thought. I found it very interesting to find Judas Iscariot as one of the people in there. So you can always read more about it in that case. So there's the power of Mary's name, just her title alone, the Immaculate Conception. Father Vincent Lampert, he's a modern day exorcist. He's in, I believe, Indiana, yes. So in his first case in America, he just came back from training. So he was an apprentice in Rome, Italy, came back to Indiana. Before he could even just rest from his travels, he got a call from a lady who was possessed. And this lady, long story short, was he tried to get her into a holy space. She escaped and ran out of the holy space into an abandoned home nearby. So it happens to be in a rural area. So at the time he was inexperienced. When you're doing an exorcism, you should never do it in an unholy place. It always has to be on sacred ground. Unlike the movies always portray this abandoned home, it's midnight, and there's no protection for you. But he was inexperienced at the time. He followed her, he and his partner, chased her to this home, and they found out the home was an abandoned convent. It used to be a convent full of sisters, abandoned. And finally they caught her. The other priest pinned her down, and he was basically adjuring this demon to get out. And similar to Father Theophilus, the demon wouldn't get out. It was a very powerful demon. So finally he says, in the name of Mary, I command you to give me your name. And similar to this other case, the demon finally relented. And the demon says, my name is Leviathan. So Leviathan from the Old Testament, you will read about that in the book of Job, for example. So it's not just a mythological figure, it's a real demon, that's his name. And Father Vincent says, as a sign that you will leave, because demons will always say they'll leave, but you don't know for sure if they'll leave or not, right? Because they're the prince of lies, you don't know. So he commanded, he said, as a sign that you will truly leave, I want you to pray the Hail Mary before you leave. And of course, you can imagine the torture that must have given the demon. And according to Father Vincent Lambert, you can actually find it on YouTube, he talks about this. He says the demon said the Hail Mary backwards, just mix and match the words. So he would say, Hail Grace full of Mary, and just make fun of Mary. So finally, Father Vincent said, I call upon the Virgin Mary to come and basically step on his head. And that's when he said the Hail Mary very slowly, but in excruciating pain. Said the whole thing, finished it off, let out this ridiculous cry that shrieked throughout the entire place, and the demon left. The woman's finally liberated, truly liberated, never came back again. So there's your modern day case. That was his first case. Imagine a rookie dealing with Leviathan, very high level demon. But I mean, the Lord believed in him. He always uses the weak to bring down the strong. So those are just a very, very few cases of Mary involved in just exorcisms. I haven't even talked about the use of sacramentals and whatnot, which I will be talking about soon after this. Dangers to avoid. I think we all know this. Habitual mortal sins. I put that at the top of the list. Habitual mortal sin is like you putting fresh meat into the ocean and hoping a shark won't come to you. That's what mortal sin is to a demon. That is why when you watch these haunted shows, the more violent of a history a place has, the more deaths, the more violence it has, the more likely that place is haunted at the most extreme level. And you'll see that. That's always a common theme. So let's say you have a murder in the house compared to another place which had not just murder, but had prostitution, child molestation, that kind of stuff. You'll see the difference in demonic activity. Both houses have demonic activity, but the second one has a much higher level. So habitual mortal sins, if you have a lot of that, it will attract demons of all sorts. And there are different types of demons for different types of sin. So there's no time to talk about that in scope, but just suffice it to say there are different types of demons that are attracted to different types of sin. For example, sexual sin. You'll attract most likely Asmodeus. And you guys know where Asmodeus comes from. It should sound familiar to you. Book of Tobit. If you guys read the Book of Tobit, you'll see Asmodeus was the demon who killed seven husbands that Sarah had prior to her marrying Tobit, or Tobias. So that demon mentioned in the Book of Tobit is not a mythological figure. It's not an allegorical figure that a lot of biblical scholars would like to purport nowadays. It was a real demon. That was his name. So I put here Father Gary Thomas's story. This is what I heard from him personally when he was here in Anaheim Convention Center. And I would say I was taken aback when I heard this, but this is how it goes. He was seeing this family, a father who had a lot of demonic activity. And the family was actually South American. They were South American immigrants, came over here in the US, still were not citizens yet. They were in the process of going through that. So he had a translator, and he was listening to this story. So apparently the father was possessed, going through a lot of problems. But when he says, okay, I'm gonna pray the prayers of exorcism over you to see what's gonna manifest, as he did it, the father was not the one who manifested, but it was the son that manifested, a little boy, just a little boy manifested. So the demon actually talked to Father Gary Thomas through the little boy. And so we found out that it was all a hoax, a deception. The demon wanted the whole family to think that the father was possessed so that they wouldn't pay attention to the son who was a real victim. They would just be fruitless, focus on the dad. The dad had problems, he saw stuff, he experienced stuff, but he wasn't possessed. So finally Father Gary adjured the demon and said, how did you get in? Who gave you authority to get in? And as I forgot to mention, but the demonic world is very legalistic. Legalistic in the sense that it has rights. If you give rights to a demon, it will take your rights. If you want to take back your rights, it will have to give back your rights if the Lord makes it do so. So demons are very legalistic in that sense. So the demon told Father Gary, this father gave me the rights to his son, and by right, I have ownership over his son. And the reason why is because in the family, the father is the authority figure of a family. He's supposed to be the authority figure. So being a dad is no simple thing. Being a father is no simple thing. It's not just a matter of bringing home the paycheck, putting food on the table. You have to be a spiritual guardian for your family as well. So Father Gary says, what do you mean he gave you rights to his son? And this is a real kicker. He says that the dad was heavily involved in pornography and a lot of sexual deviancy. And it was first through his habitual sin of pornography that allowed me to enter this home and take possession of his son. And because he gave up his authority as the spiritual guardian of this family, I was able to come in by right. And I have rights to choose anyone I want. So he chose the son. He chose the son, possessed the son. And so Father Gary, long story short, had to do an exorcism over the son. And he also said, you as the father need to change your life. Just because I clean house one time doesn't mean the door is closed. You have to close that door by going back to the church, living the life that you should be living, to close that door and be the man that you were created to be. So he concluded the story with that. We don't know if the father did what Father Gary asked or if he did not. But that is, suffice to say, habitual mortal sin it just opens up doors, a lot of doorways that you would never think. So we tend to think of sins like that as just vices, something private between you and God. No one knows. It doesn't affect anybody, but it does affect people. So when I heard that story, I'm like, wow, I've never heard that before. I've heard about all the talks about chastity and how it's supposed to lead you to a virtuous life and that kind of thing, but I never thought about the spiritual ramifications. Satanism, obviously, don't get involved in that. New Age stuff, very popular now. Don't get involved in it. Wicca, Santeria is getting very popular. Voodoo is really big on the East Coast and the South, especially in Florida, Louisiana, definitely in Cuba. Psychics, mediums, fortune tellers, ghost hunting, obviously. I have an uncle who does ghost hunting. He thinks it's a good idea to go to a cemetery and talk to ghosts. Anyway, he's not in a good place right now, so we can keep it at that. Seances and communications of the dead. There's a place right off of Garden Grove and Brookhurst. It's called the Association of Metaphysical Research, and they actually offer services, official services, to call up dead people, anyone you want, any dead relative, guaranteed. And if you're possessed by a demon, they'll exorcise you too. If you need to talk to anybody, just pay them enough dough and they'll do it. Surprisingly, it's very big in the Vietnamese community. And my aunt lives basically next door to this place, so she knows who goes in, who goes out. And she says exactly at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. when they have their sessions, usually in the evenings, she would see doctors, like doctors that are pretty well known in these communities show up. Doctors, lawyers, and just really educated folks. People you would think are educated and not believe in this kind of stuff, but they show up. First, because they have the money, and second, just because you're educated doesn't mean that you know your stuff spiritually. Just means you know your profession, that's it. So, seances, it's a lot more common than you think. Food offered to the dead or idols, never eat that kind of stuff. It's always attached to some kind of spirit, so when you eat that, you're ingesting it in yourself as well. It's very hard to get rid of once you get it in your system. The Ouija board, obviously not. And of course, lastly, original yoga. I put original yoga because I'm not talking about exercise yoga. If you're using yoga strictly as an exercise and you're not meditating, which is the original intent of yoga, opening up your chakras and inviting spirits to come in and clear out your chakra and all of that, then you're good. Just don't do that original stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna play this video. This is Adam Bly, by the way. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He's what's called a paratus of the church, which means he's been sanctioned by the church to be an expert theological advisor. So he's a layperson from Penn State University, a medical psychiatrist and also professor. So he's been in the field. He's done a lot of exorcisms, assisted with them. He's seen a lot of things. So he's on the team that evaluates whether a person has a mental illness or whether a person truly is possessed before they go on with the case. So in this clip, he talks about people who do witchcraft and what the demons think about those type of people.
Bottom line is, by the way, demons have great disdain for people involved in witchcraft and Satanism. When they get into the exorcism with us, they mock those people. The person they're possessing, it's almost like when you're involved in this for long enough, it's almost like you stand by the water cooler and you talk to Fred for a minute and go back to your desk. You'll have moments like that in the midst of this where the demon's like, do you believe this person actually believed what I told them? And they'll call them a bunch of expletives and deride them and mock them and then go back into, whatever show they're putting on for us. Seriously, I'm not kidding. They have great disdain for people that fall for their games. Wiggling your fingers and saying some syllables doesn't do anything. What you're doing is you're showing obedience to some book or something some spirit inspired you to, and through obedience you're inviting relationship. So that demon may play along to puff up your pride, but that's all that's going on. You're not actually controlling anything. Okay, next. Trying to keep moving here. Unfortunately, a lot of people that are older and alone, widowed or widowers, demons will come and pretend to be the dead spouse. And the person in their grief and loss will invite that presence and interact with it. This can also lead to possession. The devil is not shy about playing on any human weakness, the maternal instinct, loss in our life. He'll pretend to be anything that'll get us to fall to him. Okay? So accepting offers for companionship, power, assistance, intimacy. Next. Pardon sin. Some people, we talked about the normal activity and how sin can get deeper, and we've all probably experienced that. I know I have. If I don't try to act on something and address it, that sin can get deeper. It gets worse. The behavior gets worse. The fixation on it gets worse. Again, it comes back to confession. Okay? Next. The bottom line is
Sorry. Okay. So that was the first clip. The second clip I wanted to show you is a war story, what he calls a war story. And this is what I call a dormant demon. Demons can actually be inside a person's body for a very long time and that person not know it. It's like pretty much like hepatitis C, for example. You don't know you have it until it's too late, kind of thing. So demons can actually be in a person's body and not manifest until it's provoked to manifest. So this would be the second one.
give you a quick example. We don't have time for many war stories, but a real case, a very pious, wonderful young lady from Peru in South America was basically raised mostly by her grandmother, who was a village witch. Did tarot card readings, herbal stuff, all kinds of spiritual services for the area. Taught her tarot cards on her knee. from the time she was very little. She never did them once in her life. But because this is what, grandma's teaching me, she picked it up from watching. Never did it. 26 years into her life, she's at college here in the States, and her friends are playing with tarot cards in a dorm room. And they've got their little book, and they're trying to figure out how to do it and laughing, and, it's a college thing. And she says, well, I could probably show you how to do that a little better. I mean, I know a lot about it. I don't need the little book. And she made the mistake of reading the tarot cards. That night she went from 0 to full possession. Now, when we were dealing with the demon, the first thing the demon started saying was, stupid witch, stupid witch, stupid witch, stupid witch, stupid witch. And it was ranting about her grandmother. And we said, what are you talking about? And it said, that old woman put me in this pious girl, and I had to sit in here for 26 years. I couldn't put a finger on her for 26 years. And I had to listen to her praying and being nice to people, and he was just complaining and complaining about the grandmother. She's getting help. She actually called me just like a week ago to give me an update. It's been a few years since I talked with her. So these are just some of the examples of the way it can go with possession. Give you a quick example. We don't have time for it. In some cases, up to possession, delivery.
So that's the last one. So the last clip, I would give him just another 2 minutes of this. He'll be talking about deliverance, the deliverance ministry. I've alluded to the laying on of hands and how it's dangerous in charismatic retreats, and he just really explains it well. So this is something that I like for all of us to know, and if you know of anyone in a charismatic retreat, for them to know as well.
In some cases, up to possession, deliverance prayer is also needed. What's deliverance prayer? Really briefly, deliverance prayer is, oh God, please help this situation. It's an indirect request to God to do something. That's called deprecatory prayer, technical term. It's a request. I'm not directly engaging in a conflict with the demon. Imprecatory prayer is, in the name of Jesus Christ, get out. It's not a request, it's a direct interaction. So now there's a conflict. And by engaging in a direct conflict, you have consented to the pushback because you've thrown the glove down and said to the demon, let's go. And this is why the church separates solemn exorcism from everything up to exorcism. Because when a demon has full rights to possess a body, it requires a direct adjuration from the priest to dislodge it. Does that make sense? Now, generally, in the deliverance prayer world, in the charismatic world, there's, I think, debate about how far to go. Basically, here's my stance on it based on experience and seeing real cases that came out of things. Praying for somebody is a powerful thing. And unless they're fully possessed, and even when they're possessed, you still pray for them. Overstepping your bounds and saying, in the name of Jesus, get out, and taking the role of direct imprecatory adjuration is probably dangerous, because you're telling the Spirit, I want to struggle with you spiritually. I'm commanding you to get out in the name of Jesus Christ. Even though I'm not a priest, I don't have the bishop's permission, therefore I don't have the weight of the church's prayer behind me. It's just me and my faith. I'm telling you to get out in the name of Jesus Christ. You are consenting to a struggle. You're consenting to a conflict, to a certain extent. I'm not saying it's going to blow up and be a problem every time, but understand what you're doing, okay? The church is generally reserved imprecatory language, and this is explored a little more fully in a few places. Cardinal Ratzinger wrote a letter about this in 1986 to the whole world, to be promulgated all over the world, saying lay people aren't supposed to be talking to demons. I'm trying to think how. It's probably that it's pointing towards me. Yeah, it's pointing towards me a little bit. Okay. So, that's my advice. The other advice is, and this is not popular with everybody, I've seen a lot of problems come out of touching somebody and praying against whatever problem they have. Why? When a priest touches somebody, their hands are consecrated. There's a reason that priests lay hands on things and bless them with consecrated hands. When a lay person lays hands and physically touches, and starts praying against something, particularly in precatory language, in the name of Jesus, get out of them, stop bothering them, get away from them, whatever it is, you have consented to a struggle with whatever spiritual baggage that person has. Now, we have a real, full-blown possession. It's going on 15 years now in this country from a person who prayed over somebody else who had a demonic problem, used the leonine minor exorcism that includes imprecatory language, begone Satan, this type of thing, and touched them while they did it. They felt it rush into them and they've been possessed ever since. I'm not saying that's going to happen every time, but if you stumble across somebody who's possessed and you don't know they're possessed and you touch and pray against it, you've said, I challenge you, and you're giving the contact, which is, it's very important. And, we don't have time to explore this, but God has created our bodies and physicality that touch is a very important thing. So my advice to you is pray for people. Don't be drawn into the idea that, no, I need to touch them and lay hands on them, and I need to command it to get out, because this is actually pride. I need to be the special person that when I touch people, the demons flee and run away. You see how the devil can draw you into pride with that. Praying for somebody is submission to God. Jesus, you're in charge. Okay? Jesus, please help this situation. You're the only one that has the ability to resolve this ultimately. Anyway, even if something happens as I'm praying and touching somebody, it's Jesus Christ doing it. He mandated us to do these things, yes. Mandated the church to do them. Should be the priest doing it. So I know that's not popular, but that's my advice. Pray for people sincerely with your heart. Don't be touching people that you don't know what's going on there, because you could be getting into a tussle with more than you bargained for, and it's safer just to pray.
Pretty loaded stuff, right? A lot of loaded stuff. I know maybe for some of you it could be overwhelming to hear all of these things at once, but I just felt that it's something very important to hear from an expert in the field, such as Adam Bly. He's been through so many cases, he's seen so many things. So I personally enjoy learning about this kind of thing because I can see our faith working in extraordinary ways, working in a concrete way, rather than just the usual, okay, you're a good Catholic, go to Mass, be a good person. That's just a small part of what it means to be Catholic. When we're in this world, the moment we profess ourselves to be Catholic, we're putting ourselves at war spiritually. And if we deal with these things and we have no clue on how to deal with it, no knowledge, we can get ourselves hurt. Like this guy that he mentioned, can't believe you've been possessed for 15 years and going, all because you put your hand on somebody and says, in the name of Jesus, I command you to get out because I'm at a charismatic retreat and I think I have this gift of getting demons out. And he ended up getting possessed for 15 years. So I think that's a very loose end that we need to tie up within our church, the Catholic Church, whenever we do charismatic retreats. They often become overblown without oversight. So without solid oversight and guidance, it can lead to stuff like that. So yeah, if you know anyone who's in the charismatic, who's involved, then just let them know about this kind of detail. So I'd like to just finish it off.
I mean, at the same time, I don't know what the situation with that guy is, but using touch, I can see what he's trying to say, right? But I think if the person with full intention, or not full intention, but good intention of using God's name, it's not through them as prideful. I wouldn't think.
Right.
But I think if the person had, saying that it is my hands that is delivering the spirit, we know that's not how it should be done. But I see what he's trying to say, but I don't think in all cases.
No,
I don't think in all cases. I consider myself charismatic. I believe the Holy Spirit works in mysterious ways. God works in mysterious ways, and I don't think God gives us the power to do it. It's through God Himself.
Right.
I think most people who are in the charismatic movement believes that it's the Spirit that's working.
Right, and this is where I think the distinction is so well made when he said imprecatory and deprecatory. When you're using deprecatory and charismatic gifts, that's perfect, because you are, like you said, invoking God, and you're just an instrument. But I've been to these retreats and they call themselves charismatic, but they're saying, I command you.
Right. So when in that case, I think that would be. I mean, I experienced that too,
Right.
where the person says that they themselves are the ones that are
Yeah.
doing it, and I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean, not
dangerous.
right at all.
Yeah.
It has to be through the name of God, through the name of
Definitely.
Jesus, that we're expelling whatever. We don't know what it is, but we have to trust that it's God's work. And then we all have to live out our. I mean, on another end, aside from being consecrated priests, I mean, we also live out our baptismal calling as priest, prophet, king. So
That's right.
there's that component too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes. So let's see here. Let me go through this. Skip the last slide, just so I can get to this. I've mentioned sacramentals before. Pretty sure most of you know what sacramentals are. They're basically objects that can be used for holy purposes. But I like to give you some concrete stories, some concrete examples. Holy water, for example. This is a story I've heard from my mom, and this is what she heard from another lady who is a mother of a priest back in Vietnam. So back then, after the war, communists won, my mom was exiled to the boonies, basically, in the middle of nowhere, as part of the so-called new economy of the communists. So she was there. She lived about a mile or so away from her neighbor. And this old lady told her this story. When the old lady was a young woman, she went over to a pagan village in the north, and she would always observe them doing these dances. They have this ritual they had pretty much every night. And there's always this guy who professes to have power over demons, power over the spiritual world. And if you need help, you would always consult him. So as a sign that he has power, he would always do this ritual walking over hot coal on his bare foot. Always walk on hot coal, burning hot coal, to prove that it's truly burning and it's hot. There's no gimmick. You'd have regular people walking in, and of course they'd burn their feet. Their flesh would melt and attach itself to the coal the moment it touches. That's how hot it is. And here you have this guy just walking around like it's nothing. So one time she swam across the river, because she would observe it across the river, the bank. She swam across it, her and her friends. And her friend says, don't go any closer. This is not a place we should be, because Catholics are taught to stay away from pagan villages. She says, no, I gotta be there. I want to see if he can walk after I do this to him. So she took holy water and sprayed it on the hot coals as he was. So he's facing this way, the bank's here behind him, and he doesn't know that she's behind him. Just sprayed holy water on the hot coals, a couple sprinkles, right? And then she swam back across the bank, and he was doing his thing as usual, like, hey, look at me, I'm gonna walk on hot coals. The moment he stepped on it, he got burned instantly, just like the other guys. And right away he says, we have Catholics here. Find the damn Catholics. In Vietnamese, find the damn Catholics. We have Catholics here. And he knew I could not do it because they're able to break what I did. Simple holy water. And that was her definition of having fun. Swimming to pagan villages, like ruining their rituals and all of that. That was great. And I love that story. So that's an application of holy water. It's no little thing. When you go to mass, you do the sign of the cross. It's no little thing. You're signing yourself with something really holy. Miraculous metals. So the walls. I know of a case person who has a lot of problems in the walls. A lot of scratching, a lot of thumping. And he knows for sure it's not a rat, it's not some animal, it's nothing. It's not an animal. And so, talk to the priest. The priest says, okay, well, what happens when you pray? When you pray, things get worse. The more you pray, the louder it gets, the more scratches he hears. So finally the priest says, how about this? Why don't you put the miraculous metal into the wall? Just put it into the wall. Just take out the wall outlet, the electrical outlet, put in a metal under each outlet in the walls that have problems. And the moment he did that was the moment the noises ceased. Noises they just disappeared. So So they did everything. They did holy water, they put salt around the perimeter, they tried everything, but they never tried this method. So the moment he tried this method, noises stopped. No more scratching, no more crazy noises. Recording of John Paul II praying the rosary in Latin. It's very powerful. Know another person who's been oppressed for a while, been oppressed for a very long time. And every time he has these bouts, he would just pray, his usual prayer, to almost no avail. So finally he thought, well, why don't I actually turn on a recording of a living saint, a now canonized saint, praying the rosary in Latin. It's on YouTube. And every time he has these oppressions, he knows he has them, turns them on, and it goes away. Always dies down almost instantly. The moment he stops playing it, it comes back to get him. So he always has to go through a whole rosary until the whole thing dies down. So something as simple as that, even using a recording, and when you think about it, it's the saint praying, truly praying. It's a powerful thing. And these last things I'd like you to know about too, how haunted objects can be very powerful. There's a tape recording, which I watched on this show, I forget which show it's called. There's a woman whose son was possessed because mom and son moved into an abandoned convent. It was very, very cheap. Had nowhere else to go, single mom, moved in. She found this recording, videotape recording, and she was curious to play. So she's Catholic. She actually asked the pastor, hey, what's the history behind this abandoned convent? And do you have an old tape recorder player that I can actually play? Because it's such an old technology. He says, no, you don't want to play that. And he would refuse to tell her the history behind the whole place. So she didn't listen, obviously. She was curious. She found the player that would play the tape recording. So she turned it on. It happened to be an interview of a nun who used to live in that convent when it was still an active convent. And the nun was actually being interrogated by a priest for a murder case. And the murder case was linked to an exorcism. So the guy happened to die during an exorcism. And the priest was asking her, how did he die? What happened? And during the middle of the recording, the interrogation, she was getting into the details of what happened. All of a sudden she started screaming and said that she can't breathe. And she started talking in a choked voice. And she died in the interrogation. The whole tape recording got that. She actually died during that recording. Couldn't save her. She was choked on the spot. So finally pastor told her the story. And the only reason why he told her the story was because after she played that recording and it got to that part where the nun was choked out, the son was possessed. The son became possessed on the spot. So finally brought the son to the pastor. Pastor told her, why did you play it? I told you not to play it. The story was there was a homeless man and he needed shelter. So the Mother Superior had him come in to take care of this man. And they found out that he was possessed. So what did Mother Superior do? In her pride, she says, I'm going to do the exorcism myself. And the rest of you nuns are going to pray with me. So she actually took the ritual, did an exorcism on her own authority, and the man died during the exorcism. And abusing her authority, she commanded under vow of obedience for everyone to keep their mouth shut and bury the dead body in the backyard of the convent and not report it. He's a homeless guy anyway, who cares, right? Who's looking for him? So just bury the guy. And business goes on as usual. So eventually it was found out, the diocese investigated, did all of these things, this investigation. I don't know why the convent got abandoned. I forget the name of the convent, but I can always look it up later. But you can always read more into the story. So anyway, whole place closed down. Just because she turned on this recording, son got possessed. Son was saved eventually, at the very end. Wedding dress. Wedding dress. This wedding dress happened to be, it happened to be used by a virgin who was sacrificed in a satanic ritual. She was killed with the wedding dress on. The Satanist cleaned up the dress and sold it to a pawn shop. Pawn shop then sold that to an antique store because by that time it became an antique. It was like a vintage dress. A honeymooner wanted to have a honeymoon on a budget, bought this vintage dress. It looked so beautiful, and if she would have bought it not vintage, it would cost too much. Bought the dress, went on the honeymoon. She almost killed her husband. She was possessed, almost killed her husband. Eventually she met an Irish priest. They were both Catholics as well. The Irish priest investigated into the dress, found out where it came from because there were some signs on the dress, and he was able to trace it back where it came from and everything. So he took the dress, burned it in holy water. After he did that, she regained her control over her body, and ever since she's been normal. So just from a simple wedding dress. And of course, lastly, the indestructible Ouija board. This Ouija board, kids were playing with it, found out it was not a good thing, demons were manifesting, tried to get rid of it by burning the Ouija board. And the Ouija board actually came back in the room after they burned it, perfectly intact. So finally, Father had to get involved, sprayed it with holy water prior to burning it, and then it became ashes, never came back. So the power of holy water, yet again, power of sacramentals, extremely powerful things. So there's your indestructible Ouija boards, just a bunch of stories to tie up everything. And I have just one last video. This one's by Zachary King. You guys heard of this guy? Only Truman? Zachary King used to be an ex-high priest of the Church of Satan, one of the covens. And so I extracted the last part of his testimony on how he went from an ex-high priest to a full-blown Catholic today. He's just on fire for the love of God. So I'm just going to play that very quick for all of you.
We got married, and I was a manager of a jewelry store in America. And I went to work one day, and this woman came up, and she said she wanted to buy a pair of gold hoop earrings. And then I was just about ready to close the deal, and she said, well, actually, I'm shopping with my daughter, and I've got to go finish that. When I'm done, I'm going to come back and buy them. And I know when women say that, that means I'm going to go find them cheaper someplace else. But she had an honest face. She had a face that said, I'm really going to go do that. So I was like, all right. So I put them aside. 3 hours later, this woman comes back. We do the transaction, and I said, if you call the number on this receipt, we're having a promotion right now, and you could possibly win $1,000. She's like, oh, that's great. I've got something for you too. This is words I don't want to hear, because I know a pamphlet's going to come out, and somebody's going to say you need to drop to your knees and beg for forgiveness and ask Jesus into your heart, and blah, 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 blah. I don't have that option. You cannot, as a Satanist, go tell a Christian, sorry, I sold my soul to the devil, and don't have the option to do that. You know, they get offended, and then they start trying to witness to you even harder. If somebody would have come up to me to witness to me, I'd have just cussed them out and walked away. If you gave me a pamphlet, I might have read it out of entertainment, and then I would just throw it away. So this woman instead pulls out a little gold disc, and I'm looking at that. I'm expecting a pamphlet, and this little gold disc comes out. I don't know what this is. And she says the most bizarre thing. Now, you've heard my testimony. 26 years a Satanist, 146 abortions, 120 churches, all the evil I can stand. If you're going to say something that I think is weird, you're out there. She said, the Blessed Mother is calling you into her army. I've got no reference. 2 people like that. All right. I have no reference point for the Blessed Mother. I have no idea who that is. I grew up Baptist. Mary gave birth to Jesus. So I'm thinking, Isis? Gaia? I don't know. And she says it's very powerful. Well, now I know she's not a Christian, because Christians don't bless anything. So she's got to represent a cult. Probably like some female deity cult. Not really interested. I thought, I came from 2 big cults. Not interested in yours. As well, if I joined that cult, it could be connected to my first one. This could go poorly for me. And she starts talking about more stuff. I've got no idea what she's saying. I'm just totally tuned her out. Whatever it is she's saying, I still don't know. And she just went on and on and on. And then I tuned back in. And she tells me again, it's very powerful. Well, now I'm insulted. Now I feel like you're challenging me. How dare you tell me it's powerful? And I'm thinking, I was the high wizard for 12 years. I was the top magic practitioner. Yeah, I might have shared that position with 9 other men, but I did it at a time when the world had close to 7 billion people. 7 billion people, and I am one of the top 10 magic practitioners in the world. Who are you to tell me that little blessed, miraculous metal has any power whatsoever? This cannot do anything to me. I am more powerful. If God was stronger than me, God would have stopped me when I was killing babies, but he didn't. And this is my attitude. I am better than you. I'm better than everyone in the room. I have more power than anybody. There's nothing you can do to me. Give me that medal. I will show you. The Holy Spirit used my ego and my arrogance against me. I put my hand out, she dropped it in my hand. My plans were to close my fist around it, feel that it has no power, and then I'm gonna toss it on the floor or slam it on the counter. Up until now, I had remembered that I had sold this woman gold. That made my sales day. I was very excited, but now I don't care if she returns it. I don't care if she gets her money back. You don't tell me that something is powerful or that it can do something. I will tell you. I clenched my fist around it, and my mall and my store were gone. I was standing in a darkened void. There was nothing there but me and this woman. And she's telling me about all the sinning I've committed. And after she says whatever she says, she ends it with, and that's of the devil. And you did over 100 abortions, and that's of the devil. And you've been a Satanist for over 25 years, and that's of the devil. And you broke up over 100 churches, and that's of the devil. And everything she says ends with, and that's of the devil. And she says again, and I'm terrified at this point, I equated what she was able to do with magic. As the high wizard, I could not have done this. That somebody can do this, I'm in awe. And I think I'd like to let go of the metal, but am I gonna fall through this void? How do I find my way back to my mall? I have no idea. And she tells me again, the Blessed Mother is calling you into her army. And I instantly knew that was the Mother of God, which is one more person like that one. What a cheap way to get applause. So as a Baptist, we would have never said Mother of God. So it had to have been the Holy Spirit telling me, but I knew it was the Mother of God. And as soon as I knew it, Mary appeared. She smiled, and she took me by the hand, and she gently turned me around. And Jesus was standing behind me. And I knew that Jesus was my Lord and Savior. I knew that I had not sold my soul. Jesus was there, and I knew that everything that was Zach, all my magic, all my occult, all my evil, everything that I was doing that was for the devil stopped. And from now on, everything I did was going to be for Jesus.
Here's the last testimony, very last one of tonight's evening. So there was a lot of information out there, a lot more anecdotes and stories, really. So I'll end it here, and just if you have any questions, just really open the floor to anybody. We can talk now, or we can talk later, so it's really up to you.
I just have a quick question. You know how you say Mother Mary, there's a case with Father Belfast where the priest call on all the name in heaven, but it doesn't work until Mother Mary. God allows that because from what I heard, God wants to humble Satan by letting a woman defeat him, right? Because there's going to be a theologian that say that, you know, argue with me and say that, how can you say Mother Mary is more powerful than God? God allows that to humble the devil.
It all comes down to humility. And she is the highest saint in heaven, which is why she has more authority than all the saints combined, all of the angels. Yeah. Okay. No questions at all? Yes?
So I had asked my friends this question. If atheists, for example, find it so hard to believe in God, they just say there's no God, then why do so many people, I think it has to do with movies and media and things like that, given to the, okay, then evil exists.
That's the paradox of their opposition. I don't believe anyone's truly an atheist in this life. Everyone, the most hardened atheist knows in his heart there is something out there greater than himself, greater than this world, this universe. But his opposition is psychological. So the fact that they acknowledge that there's an evil world but not a good world is very self-contradictory. Because the evil world doesn't demand anything from him. He can continue living his current lifestyle, doesn't have to change his lifestyle. The moment he says, okay, there's evil, then there's also a God, maybe I should start considering this God, he has to change his life. Abandon previous lifestyles, vices, poor choices. So it's all really psychological, it comes down to that. And that's why I think that they don't want to believe or acknowledge the good world, but they acknowledge the evil world.